Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Noon Show on day 2 of the Farm Progress Show 2024. Thanks to everybody joining us virtually as well. We are thrilled that you took time out of your day to join us here for the Farm Progress Show. We hope to see you in person in Decatur next year. For those of you folks that came to Boone, thank you so much. What have you thought so far about today's Farm Progress Show? All right. Love to hear that. Up on stage with me is Mr. Don Torty here at Farm Progress. He's one of those who keeps everything running like a clock out here, Mr. Torty.
Overhead.
Day 2, how's it going?
Well, this is fantastic. I want to echo Mike, first of all. Thank you so much for being here. This is a great show. It would not be a great show without all of you here supporting all of our customers. Our exhibitors are out here, but hey, we've worried for a long time about heat, about weather, etc., and everything is cooperating pretty darn good today.
That is fantastic, and the crowds have been strong. Don, can you give us a hint as to how the attendance has gone so far?
Well, my hint is only looking outside, but all I do is tours. I do tours all day long with the golf cart. It's been pretty tough to do a tour today, so that is my barometer of it's a darn good day, Mike.
All right, so you're doing tours all day.
Yep.
You get to see everything on the grounds. Has anybody here had a chance to see everything at the Farm Progress Show? One guy. Excellent. Thank you. Don, you have. What are some of the highlights for you so far? What are some of the things that you've driven by and, whoa, wanted to slow down and take another look?
Well, it's, in my position, I have no favorites, right? It's like your children. You cannot have favorites out there. So that's really hard for me. But I always say at the end of the day, this is all about the latest and greatest in ag technology. And if you didn't find some of that today, you didn't do a very good job looking. Whether it be the year of the combine in case, the latest stuff that Deere has, the outstanding exhibit that Egco has, you go in Bayer and look at their plots or what Corteva has, and that's not leaving everyone else out. I mean, there's so many good things out there. But I always say there's a lot of experiential things too. I hope not only is this a business show and you looked at all that, but did you go see the Canine All-Stars? If you didn't, you should take 30 minutes to go do that. I mean, they're rescue dogs that are fascinating to, and then I go around and go, okay, here's all the food things like Boone County Cattlemen. You should go have a ribeye sandwich. So lots of things going on. And of course, Harvest is the other one that is the people that have been out there for harvest and for tillage. My boss is from New York City. He was quote unquote mesmerized yesterday watching harvest. So it's been a great 2 days so far at the Farm Progress Show.
I tell you, I'm from Iowa, and I'm mesmerized watching the harvest. I think that's something that's pretty uniform to all of us. Folks, let's give Don Torty and the entire Farm Progress Show team a round of applause for putting on such a great event. Thank you so much, Mr. Torty. All right, folks, and we are going to kick to the meat of the noon show here. Joining us for this next 30-40 minutes is Iowa's Secretary of Agriculture, Mr. Tom Vilsack. He served as the 40th governor of Iowa, mayor of Mount Pleasant, longtime attorney, 2-time Secretary of Agriculture. He's got an update for us, and let's give him the stage. Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, folks. It's great to be back at the Farm Progress Show. Apologies for my voice. I'm recovering from a few things, but great to be back, and I just had a chance to say hello to Chairman Thompson, the House Ag Committee Chair, good friend, Pennsylvania, my home state, and also Congressman Feenstra, talking about a number of things that are important, I know, to farmers and ranchers, producers around the country. Let me start by acknowledging, since I'm at the Farm Progress Show, we obviously want to make sure that we announce some progress. And today we are pleased to announce a continuation of our effort to expand more fertilizer production in this country, so we are more self-reliant and more dependent on our own capacities as opposed to capacities from some other country. Today we're announcing an additional 7 projects that we're funding in 7 states, an investment of about $35 million in expanded fertilizer capacity. The states of California, New York, Oregon, Tennessee, Wisconsin, Virginia have projects. There's also a project here in the state of Iowa. Let me just briefly talk about the Iowa project as an example of what we're doing. This $35 million in these 7 projects helps to fund an expansion of our fertilizer capacity in the country, and also allows us the opportunity to develop new ways of fertilizing to reduce costs, and also a better understanding of when and where and how to fertilize. We know that there are a lot of acres out there that probably we may be over fertilizing. As we develop sensor technology and information, we can do a better job of the fertilizers we have. In Maquoketa, Iowa, there's a facility called the Quality Flow Environmental LLC. It's a company that's going to receive a grant from USDA of $4.7 million. And what they're going to do is they're going to develop and create a thermochemical manufacturing facility that will make fertilizer from dairy waste. There are a lot of dairy operations up there in Northeast Iowa, and an opportunity to convert their dairy waste into fertilizer. This will expand the capacity here in Northeast Iowa of about 540,000 tons of fertilizer is what they are hoping to be able to build and produce from this facility. We have to date funded 64 projects within this fertilizer initiative, investing $286 million. These projects are located in 32 states. So an important opportunity. We're going to see about 5.5 million tons of fertilizer now being produced in the U.S. And we're just beginning this process. We have more projects that we're in the process of reviewing from an environmental standpoint, and sure that over the course of the next 2 months or so, we'll be making additional announcements. So that's one piece of good news. The other progress I want to report is on the issue of H5N1 and our challenge with the virus that has impacted and affected our dairy herds. I know that there's a lot of interest in not only the biosecurity aspects of this challenge, but also the vaccine challenge. We have a number of companies that have been working on vaccines, and one company has now presented sufficient information to the USDA to allow me to authorize, which I did this week, the first field trial of a vaccine for cattle, H5N1, for safety purposes. It's the next step in the development of a vaccine, which hopefully we'll be able to develop in the near term with the information that we'll get from this field trial. That will allow us to determine whether we can go to the next level, next set of steps necessary to ensure safe and effective use of the vaccine. So good news in that vein as well. The Center for Veterinary Biologics basically overseeing this effort out of our facility in Ames, Iowa. So two good announcements today. I want to talk to you a little bit about farm income. And the reality is that over the course of FY 21, 22, and 23, we saw farm income at a level that actually, when you compare it to previous 3-year periods, would certainly be the best farm income in the last 50 years and arguably perhaps ever. This year, obviously, we're seeing much lower commodity prices, and therefore, understandably, we're seeing a reduction in farm income. In fact, it's about a 25% reduction. You know, we're in the baseball season, and I think some of us are following Aaron Judge's phenomenal career. He's probably poised to hit another 60 or 62 homers. If he does that, he obviously is having a really great year. If next year he has a 25% reduction in his productivity or his home run hitting, he'll hit 49 homers instead of 62. I think most people would still say he's having a pretty good year. The challenge in baseball is that you're comparing an individual to an individual's performance, and there are certain standards that can be met in which you can define this is a good year or this is a great year. It's more difficult in agriculture, and here's why. Because there's been a heavy concentration of the income that is generated within American agriculture. I mentioned those 3 years, and we know during the 3 years, 21, 22, and 23, roughly 85% of the income was basically received and generated and obtained by 7.5% of our farms. Now we have about 1.9 million farms, so about 150,000 farms generated or received 85% of the income, which meant that 15% of that income was then spread over the remaining 1.7 million farms in the country. And that's why it's so difficult. When we see farm income numbers, we have to understand that it doesn't necessarily translate to every farmer receiving that level or that level of support. Just to put an even finer point on it, we're projecting $116 billion in net cash farm income this year. $116 billion. That compares to $155 billion last year. If you take that 116 billion and you basically multiply it by 85%, the 85% that 150,000 farms will receive, and you essentially averaged it out over every farm in that 150,000, they would receive about $650,000 of income. They're big operations. Certainly understandable that they would receive a significant amount, but that'd be $650,000. If you took the remaining 15% of that farm income and you spread it out over the 1.7 million farms that aren't in that 7.5%, each one of those farms would receive about $10,000. So that's fundamentally the difference. Large farms receiving a significant amount, smaller and mid-sized farms having a harder time. And I think it's important for us, for policymakers, for the department, to understand and appreciate that distinction. Because we need production agriculture. We absolutely need production agriculture to feed ourselves and to feed the world. But we also need to be sensitive to the needs and challenges of small and mid-sized producers, because we need them as well. We need them to make sure that our rural communities continue to prosper. Now, why is that important to the country? Because if those rural communities prosper, then there will be more young people being raised in those rural communities. And that means we'll have more young people willing to serve in our military. There's a disproportionate number of military come from those small towns. And that's why I'm concerned, because just the other day, the Department of Defense raised concerns about whether or not they can continue to meet their recruitment needs. So the challenge, I think, for any department and for Congress and for all of us is to figure out ways in which we can not only make sure that production agriculture continues to prosper and takes advantage of all this amazing innovation that you're surrounded by at the Farm Progress Show, but that we also figure out ways in which we can support our small and mid-sized farmers. Now, some folks will say, well, that's what the safety net is for. And that's why we're having this conversation about a farm bill. The necessity of having a safety net in place to make sure that farmers receive the help that they need when incomes are down or yields are down, prices are down. The problem with that is that the structure of those programs also disproportionately helps those larger farms. And that's not me saying this, it's a conservative enterprise, the American Enterprise Institute, a very conservative think tank, has done a study of the support programs and alike, and has indicated that the top 10% of producers in this country receive 60% of the benefits of the farm programs. So it's not just this, we can't just rely on the safety net to basically provide the support and help for farm families. We've got to figure out additional ways in which those farms can generate income. Because 88% of American farms and farm families have off-farm income, which is incredibly important to their continuing their operation. So the question I think we ask ourselves is simply, why is it that the farm family has to work multiple jobs? Why can't the farm work harder and generate more farm income? And that's the reason why we've invested a significant amount of time and energy and resource in building an opportunity and a model for those small and mid-sized facilities to be able to generate more than the single income from the sale of their corn or soybeans or livestock that they're raising or whatever other specialty crop they may be raising. We like to refer to it at USDA as our more new and better market opportunities. Let me give you an example of what we've done on the more market opportunities. We've expanded processing capacity. We know that the big four basically control most of the processing in this country, which makes it harder for small and mid-sized producers to have a fair price. And so we've invested in over 185 different projects to expand processing capacity in this country in over 40 states. So every state, basically virtually every state in the country, seeing additional processing opportunities. Nearly $1 billion has been invested by USDA in creating more processing. We've also invested in expanded access to higher blends of renewable fuels. We've already funded 221 projects expanding E15 and E85 dispensing systems across more than 30 states in the country, so that customers have access to more higher blend renewable fuel, which obviously creates more market opportunities for farmers. We're also investing in better markets. The idea that when farmers go, or when we go to the grocery store and we spend our dollar at the grocery store, farmers on balance get anywhere from 15 to 22 cents of every food dollar. The question is, who gets the rest of the money? Well, the rest of the money goes to people who package it and process it and marketing and grocery and stocking and transporting and so forth. Well, is there a better way for farmers to get more of that food dollar? Well, yeah, there is, by being able to sell directly to their customer, squeezing the number of people in the middle, shortening the supply chain. That's why we've been investing in local food purchasing agreements and local food school purchasing agreements in all 50 states to enable farmers to sell directly to a school or to an institutional purchaser or to a food bank so that they generate a higher percentage of that food dollar. That's why we invested in over 329 farm to school grant programs since I've been secretary again. And why we invested in what are called local ag marketing programs, more farmers markets, more value-added producer grants that allow people to transition whatever it is they're growing, a commodity that they're growing, and transition it into a more value-added proposition, and then basically selling it directly to consumers. It's also why we have invested in what are called regional food business centers. These are 12 locations around the country that are providing help and assistance and resources to communities to set up more local and regional food systems so that we have more opportunities for small and mid-sized producers to sell directly. And in the new market area, we're obviously focused on our 135 contracts under our Climate Smart Commodity Initiative. Already 13,000 farms and over 8 million acres enrolled in these programs. Here in the state of Iowa, there are over 30 programs that are available for farmers in which we are paying farmers to do what they're already doing. They're already doing climate smart practices. They're already doing cover crops. They're already doing no-till or limited till. They're already doing nutrient management strategies. They're already doing rotational grazing, and we're paying farmers to do and to continue those practices. And then we are linking them up to market opportunities where they will receive a higher value for that commodity because they use climate smart practices. Just recently, I was in Wisconsin at a distillery, a distillery that makes bourbon, makes vodka, makes gin. They are making those products from grains that are being grown in Wisconsin using climate smart, and they are basically paying those farmers a premium for what is being sold to the distillery, and then they're turning that into a value-added proposition, a locally produced product. And you know, folks in Wisconsin, that's a good product for them, in addition to their beer and cheese. So there's a terrific opportunity. The reality is this is happening all across the country. And the idea behind this is to make sure that we basically create this model and support this model so that we just don't essentially say to small and mid-sized producers, as has been said before, the only option is you got to get big or get out. It's difficult to get big when the income from the current system is so concentrated. That's why we're also focusing on reducing the cost for farmers. That's why we're investing in giving farmers the opportunity to invest in renewable energy production. We've done over 7,200 grants in the last couple of years, basically allowing farmers to install a solar panel or a windmill or a digester in an effort to try to reduce their costs and in some cases create new opportunity. Let me give you an example again from Wisconsin. Dairy operation up there takes their manure, puts it through a digester, takes the methane from that digester, and they basically sell it. They sell it to a renewable natural gas producer in Wisconsin. That's new income stream number one. What's left in the digester is then used as bedding for the dairy operation, which reduces the cost that they might incur for that. That's opportunity number two. When the bedding is finished, they put it through another process, and they extract from that process not one, but two different fertilizers, one nitrogen-based, one phosphorus-based, which they can apply to their own fields and which they can make available to their friends and neighbors nearby. That's income opportunity 3 and 4, just from the waste product from their dairy operation. They're also in the business of producing cheese, so they've got a locally grown and locally owned business opportunity there for a direct to consumer opportunity. And of course, they sell their milk to a large dairy co-op. So the opportunity for that dairy and for that farm family that operates that dairy is now 5 income streams instead of 1. The renewable energy efforts also create that opportunity for farmers to band together and work collaboratively with their co-ops to produce excess energy And we're looking at technology that will improve the way in which farmers can produce that renewable energy without necessarily sacrificing the ability to produce crops on that ground or raise livestock on that ground. If you raise the panels, for example, in solar, you can grow crops and you can also raise livestock. And you're seeing that happening across the country. So we've been focused on making sure that we continue to look for ways to make every sized operation a profitable one, because it's so important to the country. And that gets me to the Farm Bill. And I know that Chairman Chomsky has exercised his enthusiasm and optimism for getting a bill done. I share that hope. But I think, frankly, we're going to have to get practical about this. We're going to have to make sure that we know exactly how much resource is available for new programs and expansion programs. And we're going to want to make sure that the programs and resources are fair. And I think the challenge with the reference price discussion is that there are obviously geographic differences between the level of support that a rice farmer would get under the reference price proposal, nearly $300,000 on average, and what a soybean producer here in Iowa would get, about $5,400. So I think there are some issues that have to be addressed and focused on. But once we get practical, I think it'll be easy for people to get into a room and hammer out the details and hopefully provide the security and stability and predictability that farmers need in order to be able to make plans now and into the future. Let me end by talking a little bit about the trade situation. It's not surprising we have a trade deficit for the following reasons. One, we have the strongest economy in the world, by far, not even close, which means more things are happening here than there are anyplace else, which means that there is a somewhat declining demand for stuff in other places where the economy is not as strong. Number two, our exports to China have dropped significantly. There are reasons for that. They pay attention to what's being said and what's being done here in the country. I've had a chance to visit with the Chinese ambassador recently. I've had a chance to visit recently with the Chinese ag minister, and they are sensitive to the criticisms that they hear from the United States, and they're basically expressing that dissatisfaction in terms of the purchasing decisions that they make. And that's why we created the RAP program at USDA. It stands for Regional Agricultural Promotion Program. And the idea behind it is to provide resources to expand the map of export opportunities, to get away from the Chinas and the Mexicos and the Canadas and the UKs and the EUs, as important as they are to us, and figure out ways in which we can expand opportunity in other markets in Southeast Asia, in Africa, and in Latin America. We've allocated $1 billion and we've divided it into 3 years of grants. We recently announced the second tranche of $300 million. The first tranche of $300 million went to 66 organizations that will take those resources and increase their presence and increase their promotional opportunities and increase their partnerships in a multitude of countries in Southeast Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Well, the idea is that we would diversify and that we would create more export opportunities in addition to, apart from, the top 4 export markets. And the theory that we need to be less reliant on the top 4, because on any given day, in any given circumstance, we may have challenges with reference to those export markets. So that's kind of an update. Happy to take some questions. Excited about the opportunity to finish strong with the Farm Bill, hopefully by the end of this year. And if not, looking forward to continuing to work with all of you to grow market opportunities and to help improve farm income.
Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary. Let's give him a big round of applause. And we do have a few minutes to take questions here with Secretary Vilsack. We're going to clear the podium out of the way, improve our line of sight for a moment. But, Mr. Secretary, just before you started, we were up here with Matt Karsten, CEO and president of Landis Cooperative, and we were talking about their renewable diesel plant. And I asked him how it was going, and the answer was there are struggles this year due to the volume of waste cooking oil alleged waste cooking oil coming over from Southeast Asia, and that's really crimping the demand for soybean oil. We're seeing this across the country. How much of this is under the Ag Department's purview, or can you explain to us where this is coming from and if there's any relief in sight for soybean growers?
Well, this isn't something that we necessarily regulate, but it is something that we're encouraging very close inspection. First and foremost, we want to make sure that we're not getting into our market cooking oil, used cooking oil, whatever, that really has perhaps as its feedstock palm oil, which is not climate friendly.
Yes.
So first and foremost, I think it's strengthening and tightening the inspection process at the border. Then I think secondly, I think it's important for us to begin the process and to accelerate our efforts in sustainable aviation fuel, so that we can identify the feedstocks from agriculture that will be utilized in sustainable aviation fuel. We took a very important step this year with the 40B discussion. In that discussion, we essentially said agriculture has a role to play. Now, that's the first time that role has ever been recognized in terms of as sustainable aviation fuel. I realize that folks say, well, gosh, it's, I don't do all the bundling. I don't do all those practices. We just wanted to get our foot in the door.
Yeah. The key here, Secretary, was that this is now in print. It is now in federal language, and now we can use it perhaps as a precedent going forward.
As a foundation to build on it and say, well, as we get serious about 45Z, the credit that really matters, can we expand the number of crops? And we should. Can we expand the number of practices, both individually and bundled? And we should. So USDA has basically requested information from the industry through a request for information. We got that information, several hundred comments. We're analyzing those, and we're going to put those into the information we get from that. We're going to put it in a rule, and that rule is going to hopefully be able to plug into the guidance that the Treasury Department issues for 45Z. That's the goal. And the goal would be to try to expand the number of crops and expand the number of practices, and also potentially to set up a process in which periodically we would review, because science evolves. I mean, gosh, we're at a Farm Progress Store show. It's all about science evolving, right? Science evolves, and we want to make sure that we're in a position to take full advantage as new information comes on board. So I think if we do a tighter inspection, which may limit the amount that's coming in, and we provide new opportunities, then I think a lot of the concern that was expressed legitimately is not quite at the level it is today.
That makes sense.
The people say, well, let's just block it. Let's
Stop
well,
it. Yeah.
Be careful with that, okay? Because if you do that, then other countries will be able to say, well, okay, fine, then we're not going to buy any of your fill in the blank: corn, soybeans, hogs, pork, beef, whatever. So you got to be careful about that. You got to balance it. But I think tighter inspections and a very aggressive effort on SAF, I think, are two ways to approach this.
Folks, if you have a question, get your hand in the air and I will call on you. Yes, sir. Can you say that one more time? CRP acres and clean water. CRP acres and clean water.
Well, we just announced a grassland sign up about 2.2 million acres, which will take us to about 26.3 acres, which is near the cap. Legislatively, we are capped at 27 million acres. So we have, over the last 4 years, increased the acreage to the point where we're at the cap. So that's that. We're also, I think I should also point out, while it's not necessarily germane here in Iowa, anybody from the western part of the country is concerned about lack of water. And we've just recently announced a new partnership with a number of irrigation districts in the West to figure out ways in which they can help farmers utilize drought-friendly crops, or drought-friendly practices. We also have the Water in the West and Working Lands Initiative, where we're funneling conservation dollars from NRCS into these 17 states that are drought-stricken to focus on conservation practices. Now, all of that is in addition to the money from the Inflation Reduction Act which has an historic amount of investment in conservation, $19 billion over the course of a 7 or 8 year period investing. We're seeing record numbers of participation in NRCS conservation programs. So that, together with the Climate Smart initiative, which I mentioned earlier, there's a lot going on in that space beyond and in addition to CRP.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I got a question right here.
Yes, one of the national candidates is promoting some form of price control against grocery gouging, supposedly. If that's put into effect, what might that do to our crop prices if those limits are put down upon us?
So the question for our virtual audience was that there has been one presidential candidate calling for potential price controls or at least to combat price gouging in the grocery stores. What could be the impact of something like that on agriculture, particularly the beef market, which is record high prices?
Well, let me back up, sir. I can't answer that question as you phrased it because you phrased it in the context of a political campaign. Here's the funny thing about my appearance here today, folks. I'm appearing in my official capacity as Secretary of Agriculture. Because of that, I can't talk politics. Now, if I came back 5 minutes later in my political capacity and not my official capacity, I could talk all about politics, but I couldn't tell you anything I'm doing at USDA. It's called the Hatch Act, and you can get in trouble. Like you can have criminal penalties for getting in trouble. So let me try to answer it this way.
Can I ask it this way?
Yeah.
We've seen price controls and attempts to mitigate grocery store prices in the past in America. Has it had an impact on agriculture? And if so, could you explain maybe how?
Well, I think there are a lot of things. The reality is, if you're constraining something, then obviously and that's also true of tariffs.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So if you're constraining supply, that could have an impact on price. But you don't necessarily have to constrain supply when you're dealing with the issue of price gouging.
Okay.
What you're dealing with is the way in which prices are established for certain products. We're in the process of completing a draft of a study of grocery stores and the retail business. There are a lot of, it turns out, a lot of interesting things that take place between the farmer, the processor, the distributor, the retailer, and the customer that impact and affect what that customer pays that don't really add value to the product. It's not like you're taking a raw product and you pay somebody to make a pork chop out of it, and then you put it in the case at Hy-Vee and you buy it. In between those steps, where that pork chop is placed in the grocery store, for example, how it is displayed, what kind of marketing promotions may take place, and the costs involved in all of that, and how that's translated into the price you pay for the pork chop. So as we look at this issue, it's important, I think, to shine a spotlight because people are concerned. Now, the good news, if there is good news in all of this, is that the food inflation rate for food that you buy from the grocery store is now about 1%. To give you a sense of this, the historic norm, historic average over 20 years is 2%. So we're actually seeing a reduction in that rate, which is good news. But there's still a lot of issues at play. In the same vein, it's why we've focused on expanding access to processing. When you have a small number of processing facilities controlling most of the processing, it limits market opportunities for farmers. And oftentimes farmers have to take the price that they're quoted. They can't negotiate. They can't go someplace else with their. Now we've created hundreds of new opportunities out there for them to go someplace else. And that creates a little competition. Competition has a tendency to make the marketplace just a smidge fairer. And I think that's what I think all of us would like to see.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. We got a question right here.
On the subject of emerging new revenue streams, I wonder if you could share your thoughts on some of the efforts by the United Soybean Board, Soybean Association, and individual entrepreneurs, some of whom are at this show, to create new products from soy, like soy asphalt, soy foam, and so many others. What do you think the potential is today and in the future?
The question is looking at increasing revenue streams. What does the Secretary think about the work being done specifically in the soy industry with regard to entrepreneurs and organizations working to develop new products? Is that's a win, isn't it?
Well, there's no question. And let me just say, both the soybean growers and the corn growers have been very aggressive in this space. And I'm really pleased at that. The soybean board was at a COP meeting several years ago, was one of the first organizations to sign on to this notion of climate smart commodities. I mean, think about it, folks. In the past, you've had two commodities. You've had organic, very high value, but a significantly hard road to follow to get to that high value added proposition. And you've got everything else, commodity prices. Commodity prices being what they are, very little profit in them. So you got to grow a lot of it. That's why you got to get bigger, get out. That's the whole system. Soybean guys come along and say, wait a minute, can we create higher value than just a commodity? How do we do that? Well, we create an opportunity for farmers not only to be in production, but also processing. So they've stepped up. The Iowa Soybean Association is leading an effort in 13 or 14 states across the country to get folks to embrace climate smart practices, paying farmers so many dollars an acre to do this, and then basically selling to food companies, to others who use and want to be able to say to their customers, this is a climate smart commodity you're buying, you're doing right by the environment. They want a penny or two more for those soybeans, and they're going to get a penny or two more because they're dealing with PepsiCo and Coca-Cola and companies like that. The second aspect to your question is, can we create a whole range of products beyond food, beyond fuel, beyond energy from soybeans? Well, it turns out, yes, you can. In fact, USDA has invested resources under the Inflation Reduction, under the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. We've invested in a project here in Iowa that is basically creating that asphalt that you're talking about. There are enormous opportunities to do this. In fact, there are 40,000 products that could potentially be made from agricultural commodities and from waste product. It's a whole new industry. It's a whole new economy for the country, moving away from the over-reliance we've had on fossil fuels to a more balanced portfolio. So my vision of all of this, and the president's vision when he instructed us to set this system up, was not only do you want more income streams, but you also want more processing facilities located in small towns, so you create better paying rural jobs. Now, the good news is, first time in over 10 years, we actually saw an increase in rural population last year. So maybe, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. We keep working, keep plugging at it. We can turn this thing around.
Mr. Secretary, you touched earlier on the vaccines, the H5N1 issue that is around us. We've seen animal health concerns really explode over the last 10 years between PRRS and African swine fever around the world, H5N1, et cetera, et cetera. From the USDA's perspective, what would you like to see from your cohorts in government to help give us a better, faster, more prepared response? What do you think we need to see from your position at USDA?
Well, our scientists are doing an amazing job, and the fact that we're now in a field trial period with safety, that's a remarkable acceleration for a vaccine in terms of dairy cattle. This is going to come no surprise to the audience. We don't invest enough money in research. We just flat out don't. We invest a lot of money in healthcare research in this country, tons of it, millions, billions of it, and we beg, borrow, and steal for ag research money. In fact, the last 2 farm bills ago, when I was secretary before, we created this foundation. It was a private foundation. We funded it a little bit with USDA money, but the idea was, well, that's a way of maybe getting the private sector more engaged. Well, the private sector is already significantly engaged in research. The challenge is that when they get engaged, they legitimately have to have a profit from whatever it is they research. What we need is more publicly funded research, which makes it more readily available and less expensively available to the countryside. It's one of the reasons why we did the seed study recently when we said, okay, look, we got a handful of seed companies. What's the deal here? What do we need to do to open it up a little bit? Well, it turns out that maybe the folks over at the patent office, Department of Commerce, who basically sign off on new technologies. Maybe they don't know as much as they need to know about agriculture.
Right.
And maybe if we had a liaison between the Department of Agriculture and the Patent and Trade Office, maybe we could inform them about what farmers know and what farmers are doing, what we're hearing on the ground. And maybe not as many patents would necessarily be issued because it turns out that maybe that's already being done, right? And then maybe we have greater transparency, the Department of Commerce and the Federal Trade Commission. Maybe we have better transparency that when the farmer buys seed on the package, they know what they're buying before they buy it, not after they buy it, before they buy it. So they can make a choice and a decision. Maybe the same characteristics are in this generic bag versus a brand name bag kind of thing, right? So it's, I think, a better coordination among agencies and more resources in basic publicly funded research, I think would go a long way to beginning to address the significant difference. What is happening is that there's now an understanding that there is no real distinction between animal health and people health. They're connected. There's one health. And if you don't pay attention to animal health, you're eventually going to have to pay attention to people health.
Yeah.
And the people health can be very, as we've tragically found out, very, very tragic and very, very expensive.
Yes.
So better to do preventive work, right? And that's why we're, focusing resources on the vaccine side. We focused resources. We created additional incentives for the private sector to be engaged in this. And we have also indicated a willingness that once vaccines are produced, the USDA will be in the business of purchasing enough vaccine that you can make it commercially feasible for people to produce it. Because you can have a vaccine, but if there's no market for it, they're not going to produce it.
Yes.
And then the challenge will be two challenges on this. One is making sure that farmers take advantage of it. We've got this situation now with H5N1 where we're providing a level of support. Not as many farmers as I would like are taking full advantage of it. I know they're concerned about the impact on their markets, the marketability of their milk, but their milk is safe. We know that pasteurization works. And so hopefully farmers will embrace the notion of getting the support from USDA. And then the second thing is making sure that our trading partners understand what we're doing and that they understand that it shouldn't disrupt or create a barrier to trade. And that's a little bit harder because you got so many different trading partners you have to talk to, and oftentimes they play games with barriers, but we got to work through that and we got to talk through it.
All right. Lots to come in this year ahead. Secretary Vilsack, your team is telling us it's time to let you go. Do you have any parting comments for the audience before we say farewell? Well,
no, I just hope that everybody enjoys the Farm Progress Show. It's a tremendous opportunity every year to celebrate innovation. It's a tremendous opportunity for people to get together and share. And I just want you to know we at USDA are acutely aware of the challenges that you all face out there. And we're doing everything we can to try to make sure that farms of all sizes, farms of all methods of production, farms of all of the 102 commodities we grow and raise in this great country of ours. And I would just simply end by saying a big thank you to the farmers. And when I talk to non-farm groups, I often remind them of two things. One, that we're in a food secure nation, a nation that basically can provide its own food for itself, doesn't really rely, if you will, on imports. It imports because we like to have stuff 12 months out of the year, not because we need it. That's a terrific national security advantage we have. We owe it to farmers, ranchers, and producers. And then secondly, I remind them that our economy had at its foundation a strong and diverse agriculture, which allowed people to leave the farm and go and do lots of other things. And because we create so much flexibility, even with the cost of food being what it is, it's still, relative to other countries, we still have a pretty good deal. It frees up that family income to purchase a lot of other stuff, which has created this incredibly complex economy. And the rest of us who aren't farmers ought to stop every single day just before they start their day and say thank you, because you freed me up to be a lawyer. God forbid if I tried to produce enough food for my family, we would have starved to death many years ago. The reality is I knew that all I needed to do was to get a job as a lawyer, get a paycheck, and go to the grocery store. And I need to thank farmers every single day for the freedom that you gave to me and my family to allow me to pursue my dreams. And that's true of every American. And we should always remember that.
Let's give Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack a big round of applause. We'll clean up, sir. Don't worry about that. Thanks for taking the time to come to Farm Progress. Great to see you. Thank you so much. Now, will there be a press gaggle afterwards? Or yes, right outside on the corner over here. Thank you so much. All right, folks, we're going to get things reset up here. It is the noon show time. We kicked it off with Don Torty. All right. We're gonna keep things going here, folks, up on the main stage. We're gonna be talking with our Congress folk friends who are here for the show. Max Armstrong is on the stage. This is getting real here for the noon show.
Pleasure to join you, young man.
Thanks.
Great to get a download from the secretary.
It is.
A lot of places he could have been today, but he obviously decided this was an important place.
Yes, he wanted to talk to this crowd. Yes. I'll do my best. You bet. Yep. All right, folks. All right. Yeah, let's use
So this might go over.
Yep. Which side do you want to be on, Max? Okay. Love it.
We did take one mic over, so
Perfect. Yep. I'll do the intro. I know, but we got a camera and stuff. That's the camera we're shooting from. It got real hot.
Great job moderating.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Very nice.
Thanks.
would you rather be on this side?
Should we so we can
them
see?
up?
Let's do it.
Okay,
Let's do it if we can.
you're gonna jump over here then, Tim. How many?
Sorry, Tilo.
We're gonna go two here, two here.
Okay.
Do that kind. Sure.
There you are. You want this one here? Or you want it back to touch?
That's gonna be in the middle. You jump on here to get the seagull. There you go. Can I see that real quick?
No, so the consensus is GT is still very optimistic. He's still pushing for it. Anything in September, that's what he's pushing for. And then just accept it when you get a Senate vote.
Yep. Whatever you need there. Do it. Make it easy, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then one person's gonna be there?
Yep, Rob. One person.
Okay. There you go, Max. Thank you. I'm sorry. 3 or 4 minutes. 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah, so keep it quick. All right, folks, we're getting things set up here on the main stage. Yep. Just talking to the audience, Mr. Dewey. How's everybody doing today? Yeah, y'all drinking water?
Toasty.
Some of you drinking beer?
Stay hydrated. Stay hydrated. I almost got dehydrated last year, and it was not fun.
No, I think I caught a little bit of it last night.
A friend of mine who was a state police officer saw me kind of weaving around a little bit on the stage, and he said, "Let me get you out of here." And I was very, very, very thankful. So stay dehydrated. I mean, stay hydrated.
Yes.
It causes other
That's
problems,
right.
but stay hydrated.
If you are drinking a beer, also have a water. Let's see. We are going to go ahead and kick it off.
Yeah, we're going to visit with some members of Congress again here, get a little bit of a short, I guess you would call it a Cliff's Notes summary from them.
I love it. Let's get the Cliffs Notes. We're going to be talking with Iowa's congressional delegation. We've also got Congressman G.T. Thompson back there. But let's welcome first Representative Ashley Hinson, Iowa's 2nd District. No, 2nd District. Excellent. All right, Ashley Hinson, thank you so much for joining us up on stage. You serve on the Appropriations Committee, as I recall. Fill us in. What's ahead for Appropes as we get towards election and lame duck and everything else that's coming?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me. I don't know how many of my constituents are out here today, but I've seen quite a few already. So thank you for the privilege of representing you and being your voice in Congress. I am the Iowan on the Appropriations Committee. We're very lucky with our delegation. We're kind of split among all of the top committees. But I'm on the one that's obviously responsible with getting those 12 bills across the finish line. I'm very proud of the work we did in committee this year. We got all 12 out of committee. A couple of those have made it across the floor. But I find it very frustrating that here we are again approaching this September 30th deadline. We've got really good conservative bills coming out of the House. And so I'm hopeful we're able to get some sort of a continuing resolution done so that we can move forward at least and make sure that, especially when it comes to our farmers, that their processes aren't shut down and their programs and access to those programs are not shut down, as well as our military. And hopefully we can do what we can to continue to fund our law enforcement at the border.
Ashley, what can we be doing? Those of us who may not be your constituents, what is our role?
I think the most important thing to do is let people know that you're frustrated as well, watching this process play out. I have been a consistent supporter of good governance in Washington, D.C. as best we can. Come to consensus. It's our job to move the ball forward. Divided government is difficult and can be challenging. I'm a big proponent of fighting for your values, getting as much of a win as you can for your district. And so that's where I'm trying to make sure we govern. And I think if you look at the bills we've put out of our appropriations committee, we have tried to be more responsible with government spending, which as we hit $35 trillion in debt in this country is a huge importance to me. I'm a mom to two boys, 13 and 11. I think about passing that debt on to their generation and what that will do to saddle future Americans, and breaks my heart, and we need to do better. And so that's what I'm focused on.
So we got to get through this year. We got to get through that September 30th deadline. We got to see what can happen with all of these bills. Then 2025 will be here eventually. Ashley, what are you looking forward to in this next year?
Yeah. Well, I think most importantly, and I think my colleagues will talk about this too coming up, we are lucky that we have Randy Feenstra serving on our House Ways and Means Committee. And I appreciate all the work that they do to write good tax bills for our country. We need to pass a good tax package next year. A lot of the provisions in the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act are going to expire. So I think that's really important. I think the other thing that we need to be doing as appropriators is to continue to look at ways where we can invest in many of the priorities you care about here: animal health, making sure we have access to precision agriculture technology for our producers, looking at access to markets. I'm proud of the work we've done to help double the funding for MAP and FMD so that we can make sure we're actually making inroads around the world. I think that's important. And we talked a little bit about that on our panel this morning, but not just for American producers, but also for globally to have those good relationships and continue to do that. I think will put us in a much better stage for national security as well.
This is an offbeat question, but out on our farms and ranches, as we watch developments of what's happening across the nation and the world, as a journalist, former journalist, who do we trust? Who do we turn to? Who should we listen to really get the accurate story?
Yeah, I've always been a big proponent of read them all. And I think Iowans are really good common sense people. What I have tried to do as a representative, I do a town hall in every county that I represent every term. So I've done 42 in-person town halls. So I think I've tried to take every question from a constituent that they might have. I think that's really important. Telephone town halls. So make sure you're logging onto those and asking your elected representatives the questions that are on your mind, and communicating your feedback with our offices too. I think that's absolutely critical so that you get our perspective on things. But I would say consider a number of different perspectives. I read the New York Times, I read the Des Moines Register, I read the Cedar Rapids Gazette, I read the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal. Usually I scan everything every day. You get a little bit of a different flavor, but you can usually tell where people are coming from by looking at a variety of sources.
Yeah. Triangulate to get the truth might be a way to think about it. Representative Ashley Hinson, thank you so much for joining us up on stage today and joining us here at the Farm Progress Show 2024.
Thank you for covering a very, very important event, and thank you everybody for coming.
All right, Rep Hinson, everybody. All right. We're going to go ahead and call in Mr. Representative Randy Feenstra, Iowa's 4th Congressional District, hometown of Hull. I think I just exhausted my biological facts on you there, Randy. Hull, Iowa.
That's right, Mike.
Ways and Means Committee.
And Ways and Means and Agriculture Committee.
And Ag,
I'm
yes.
on both. I'm the only one in Congress that are on both.
Seriously?
So, yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Before we start on this, no, you haven't exhausted it all yet. I'm from out of state. What's Hull famous for?
Basketball and volleyball. I'm going to
Is
tell you, we own those two sports.
Oh, outstanding.
Now, Randy, you tell us, you're from Northwest Iowa. For those folks who have joined us from outside of state, Northwest Iowa is known for what? What's our claim to fame up there?
So the big thing about Northwest Iowa, we are the ag capital, in essence, of the nation. I mean, my county, Sioux County, we're number 1 or 2 in hogs, massive cattle, dairy. We have the most egg production in the country in my own county. So we get agriculture.
Yes. Animal health, huge concern in your region. Last several years with HPAI in the poultry sector, now potentially in the dairy space. Randy, what are you watching on the Ag Committee to help help bring some certainty back to producers in your
Right.
constituency.
This is so big. I mean, we lost 21 million birds in Iowa just in the last 6 to 8 months. I mean, this is just massive. And all of a sudden we saw it get into our dairy cattle. We can't have this. I mean, where does it go next? Hogs. So the great thing, our chairman is with us today, G.T. Thompson, and he's been a massive supporter of how do we prevent it? How do we make sure we have vaccine bank? How do we make sure that we have indemnity programs when it does happen? But the biggest thing is, and working with Iowa State University, is preventing it. You know, making sure that we have protocols in place that from African swine fever to even bird flu, is that we have protections, that it just doesn't move and that it doesn't come across our borders.
It may be a little bit out of your purview, Congressman, but I don't think in the 50 years I've been doing this, covering agriculture, that I've heard more discontent about crop reports, USDA estimates of crop size. Are you hearing these frustrations vented to you too?
Oh, I hear it all the time. And obviously that's driving down the commodity price right now. You know, with corn the way it is at $3.60, beans at $9.40, $9.50, wherever it might be. I mean, this is crushing. And then when you have the crop reports coming out, all of a sudden you have that downward pressure even further. And that's a massive concern right now. And, you know, some of us are forward contracting, which is awesome. But if you haven't, and if you have to all of a sudden, you know, take the corn out of the bin right now, make room for the new crop, that's tough going.
Yeah.
Do you share the sentiment of the secretary as he was expressing views about concern over prices, concern over inflation? I don't know that anything is more all compensating, all concerning of the populace out there now than inflation.
Oh, inflation is a killer, especially, you know, when you talk about the everyday Iowan or everyday family going to buy bacon, going to buy eggs. I mean, it's doubled and tripled in price. And it's not because of us producers. Our producers, we're doing great. But it's because of inflation and all the other things that are going around. I will say this, the greatest concern that we also be worried about is the tax structure, what could happen. We have all these great tax cuts that happened under the Trump tax cuts in 2017, and they all go away. 199A pass through for rural cooperatives, for farmers. 179 depreciation goes away. Stepped up in basis, like kind exchange. All this stuff is a grave concern, and it could really take a hit. We could really, as producers, take a hit if we don't pass these through and get, you know, extend them in next year.
And that sunset is at the end of 2025 on most of those provisions.
In 2025. Same thing with 40B for ethanol. And then you go into 45Z. I mean, this is scary stuff. We haven't even created the rules on 45Z yet. I mean, this is going to be detrimental to our ethanol and biodiesel if they don't get working on this.
If it's not done right, that is true. Absolutely. Representative Randy Feenstra, Iowa's 4th District. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you, sir. All right, folks, we're still checking in with Iowa representatives. Next up, this is my representative, Mr. Max Armstrong. This is Zach Nunn, representing, it's the 3rd District, correct?
That's right. Right in the heart of the heartland.
Right in the heart of the heartland. Represents me right here, a couple miles south of Des Moines.
It's always nerve-wracking when you have your boss sitting right across from you wanting to do an interview.
You have a lot of bosses,
that's
though. That's the problem.
He's got a lot of bosses right here. Fill us in. What are you working on in the House right now? What are your committees, Zach? And what are your passions?
Yeah, well, first off, thank you very much. So I'm a freshman. This is my first time out. I got to get on 2 very important committees for Iowa. You know, first and foremost, everybody from Iowa would like to be in an ag capacity. So as a freshman, getting on the ag committee was huge for us. We got to be part of this once in a 5-year farm bill. We have been able to get 17 of our priority provisions in that I've heard from Iowans when I travel to all 21 counties. We've done that just about every quarter, and we've been able to hear back things that they need. And we can talk more on that. But I want to highlight here that is more provisions in the farm bill than any other state. And for a freshman to get a bill, let alone 17 bill priorities into the farm bill, I think, you know, we are outkicking our coverage Iowa, but we're also reflecting a lot on what Iowans want to see done. Second committee I'm on is on the Financial Services Committee. Huge for Des Moines, my home seat here where we are, but there's so much of the country that depends on what happens for financial services in Des Moines. It's insurance, it's crops, it's access to capital for our banks, our credit unions, our local lenders, our Main Street providers. And then I serve on 2 other committees, which I think are very relevant to what we're talking about today. The Artificial Intelligence Task Force that really identifies how we're going to be using technology in the future. I was former director of cybersecurity out at the White House on the National Security Council. And then the China Commission, which along with Ashley here, we are really looking at what the threats and the opportunities are for us globally, but a specific focus on how China is competing with us, everything from buying farmland, stealing farm seed, which happened right here in our district, and then also going after, real technologies that put them at a competitive advantage over every American producer here at home.
You mentioned cybersecurity, Congressman, and it strikes me with your background, you've got maybe a little more expertise than the average member of Congress in that regard. What do you say to us about AI? So many of us are fearful of it. We're concerned about it. We worry about its potential for harm. But isn't there magnificent potential, especially when it comes to research, health, food production, et cetera, to really return big dividends if carefully monitored?
You nailed it on the head here. I mean, there are great potentials here and a massive return on investment to help our growers, producers, everything from bioag security to what we're able to actually put into the DNA makeup of a grain. These are the kind of things that AI is helping us move far faster than we've ever been in the past. I mean, the ability to spot an individual weed during spraying season not only saves us money, it helps conserve what I, as a sixth-generation farm kid, want to see, a future for farming across the country. But let's also be clear on this. Cybersecurity and artificial intelligence go hand in hand. Cybersecurity is an area where we've learned a lot from, and I think it provides us a roadmap for how we should be approaching things like artificial intelligence. But after areas like defense and finance, ag is the #2 most attacked sector in the world from cyber hostile actors. Most of these folks are overseas who are identifying ways that they can either steal from us or literally hold us hostage because of the information that is incumbent on all of us. And it's not just the individual growers and frontline members, but it's our producers and those folks who are actually turning what we take when we take them to the co-op into a market space that works. So there's a real threat here. And then challengingly, we have seen Iran, North Korea be leaders in this, but we are seeing a criminal element coming out of Russia, Eastern Europe, and even Latin America aggressively targeting us. And by far, the one that concerns me is this intellectual property theft and manipulation of AI coming out of the People's Republic of China. It is a direct, not only competitor with us, but they're trying to get a market advantage over us.
Sounds like you're going to have plenty of job security. Keeping an eye on all of this as we look forward. Representative Zach Nunn from Des Moines, Iowa's 3rd District.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Congressman.
Much appreciated.
All right,
Now-
folks,
now the boss.
we've still got more politics and policy to discuss. Joining us on stage now, Chairman of the House Ag Committee, G.T. Thompson from Pennsylvania. Welcome, sir.
Chairman, good to see you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity to join you again.
You know, one
Appreciate
thing that occurs to me as I look out over the crowd here, these are folks engaged in public policy. They're concerned about their government. They're
Yeah.
concerned about a farm bill. What do you say to those folks up and down the rural route who perhaps have been turned off, who have soured in some way because of what they're seeing on the television, what they're seeing on Twitter about the political morass that they might describe it as? What do you
Yeah.
say to them?
And it's hard, especially if you're getting stuff off. Well, definitely if you're getting your news off of social media. I don't think that's this crowd. But if you're getting it even on cable news, it's, what's the old saying? If it bleeds, it leads. But the fact is, when you look closely, and especially with the Agriculture Committee, we work together. And I made that commitment when I became ranking member. And then for the past 2 years while I've been chairman, I want everybody at the table. I believe that the best legislation is done when we bring everybody to the table, and we've done that. So I really want to give folks, first of all, hope and certainty that we're going to get this farm bill done, but more importantly, that we hear you. I've done multiple listening sessions here in Iowa, 40 different states, 1 territory, probably close to somewhere over 90 listening sessions altogether. And so we wrote this farm bill in what I call a tripartisan way. Republicans working with Democrats, working with all of you, the people of American agriculture. And so I also want them to know that we're listening. And I think that's important. I legislate, my style of legislation, I call it from the outside in. And that means we're listening to all of you and taking your ideas to Washington. We're not writing a bill. We didn't write this farm bill listening to the talking heads inside the Beltway of Washington.
Let's talk about a timeline for getting that bill across the finish line. Of course, you don't have any control in the Senate. That's their own process. but can you give us some insight as to how this might move forward in the House now that it's out of the committee?
Yeah, we're working hard. I'm working hard every day to get this to on the House floor. There's two aspects I'm working on, and we're getting really close on both of those. One is the financing of it. We have really closed the gap on that, working with the Congressional Budget Office. We're down to the variance I need to make up right now is $30 billion. Now, that's over 10 years. So we're really just talking for the life of the Farm Bill, $15 billion. I know that's a lot, but when in a bill that's scored at 1.51 trillion over 10 years, we're getting there, and we'll get this done. And the other one is you got to have the votes, and I want this to be a strong bipartisan vote. So I'm working at one member at a time at this point, and we're getting really close. And then I think when we get this done, we send it to the Senate. The Senate's got something great to work with. The Farm, Food, and National Security Act of 2024. And I think we have precedent to be confident. One of the other areas of jurisdictions the Agriculture Committee has, and I was surprised by this when I stepped into leadership, is cryptocurrency. And we did a cryptocurrency bill when we passed it out of committee. We passed it out of the House. Our purview is when these tokens are traded, just like wheat and corn, soybeans, or oil and gold, they're overseen by the Commodities Future Trading Corporation. The Senate didn't have a bill, just like they don't have a farm bill yet. But it's the day after we passed our cryptocurrency bill out of the House, the Senate chairwoman of Ag committed she was going to do a crypto bill. So we want to give her the same opportunity with the farm bill. And then we will have to do a short extension, absolutely short extension, just enough for the Senate to complete its work through the end of this year, so that we can, after we come back from the election, they can pass a bill. Hopefully it'll be ours with maybe some modifications. That's all right. And then we'll go to conference committee, and it's the House's turn to chair the conference committee. So I get to be the chairman of that, and we'll make sure we get it done for the American farm family.
All right, lots to watch as we get through the end of 2024. Representative G.T. Thompson, Chairman G.T. Thompson, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for being a great voice for America's #1 industry, agriculture. Much appreciated.
Thank you, sir.
Representative G.T. Thompson of Pennsylvania.
Appreciate you being here. Appreciate
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for your service to first responders. Yes, sir.
Yes. All right, we're going to continue with, We're going to continue with the noon show. If I don't rip my microphone out of its plug-in here, we are going to be talking United Soybean Board. Robbie Waltz making his way up to the stage right now. We're going to talk and say thank you to our partner at USB and hear what's new over there. Rob, thanks for joining us.
They're making possible the stage here, on our ADM stage, United Soybean Board. You know what occurs to me all the time? The quality of people who serve on the United Soybean Board all across the country. They take it seriously. You guys do, I notice.
Very much so. It's quite an honor to get to represent Iowa and then to represent the United States when it comes to soybean production and trying to spend those checkoff dollars in the most responsible way that we can.
Have you learned a lot from the experience yourself? I tell people serve on boards because you learn so much from others, and that's especially true, I think, of the folks who go to the United Soybean Board.
I was fortunate enough to, and just ending up my career at Iowa Soybean, but yes, when you get on these boards, the people that you meet, the caliber of operators, and the things that you can learn, it definitely, in a selfish way, it makes me a heck of a lot better operator at home, and so I would encourage others to step up and do it.
Rob, before we talk about what you've been doing, the work with the checkoff to promote soybeans around the world, give us an update on the farm. You farm not too terribly far from here, about 2 hours east outside Davenport. How are things looking?
They look good.
Okay. Well, that's all we're going to say since the USDA is nearby. Is that what I understand?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I think when it comes to what I've seen in Iowa, I think we were very fortunate that we didn't get the big rains. We got rains when we needed them. We were dry in June, which always leads to a good corn crop for us.
You have to be on the United Soybean Board looking at new opportunities all along, do you not? And Mike and I were talking about this yesterday. This is kind of a historic week. In Chicago, they took the wrecking ball yesterday to the big printing plant. The Chicago Tribune Freedom Center was built in the early 70s. Massive presses, running those papers out for distribution, actually all over the nation. And you would see back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, boxcars loaded with newsprint. You would see tank cars and semi-tankers with ink loaded for those newspapers. That was soy-based ink for many years because we knew it would, limit the rub off on your fingertips. It became a significant market developed by soybean growers, but like other things, there are changes, there are shifts. You have to be looking for new uses all the time, don't you?
We do. And that's the amazing part. As a director living in Iowa and with Farm Progress, I get to do quite a few interviews today, and we talk about what's out there. And I said, as a director, I'm not even sure I know what all we're using soybeans in. And there's lots of flyers out there showing it's all in your house, but we're in tires, we're in shoes, we're in asphalt right across the way here over at the Variety Varied Industries tent over there. And you think about uses for high oleic oil and what it's doing for the industry. We've now gone to about 1.2 million acres of high oleic soy. That's not competing with our commercial soy, which is nice. I mean, as a farmer, the less competition, I'm happy. So that's what we're trying to do is in firefighting foam that's a huge one. We talk about our firefighters that are out there training with that firefighter foam that has PFAS in it. That's bad. Well, we have protein in the soybean that is better and safer than anything out there on the market right now. So, I mean, it's amazing the things that are getting used out of soy.
It is. But in order to get these products or to really bring those dollars back home to Iowa farmers, Illinois farmers anywhere here in the United States, we've got to be able to get those products out to where they need to be. And I know you serve on the infrastructure committee there at USB. You took a trip to Washington recently to take a look at a port. Rob, fill us in. Why'd you go to Washington if you're from Iowa? Washington State, right? Grays Harbor?
Grays Harbor, yes. So the United Soybean Board, along with several partnering states, invested in, we can't take the checkout dollars and build things, but we can do studies to help and encourage development. And so there is a big port in Grays Harbor that exports all of our soybean meal from western Iowa, the Dakotas, Nebraska, western Minnesota, all those crush facilities. We're shipping soybean meal out. And we know that with the increase in the crush capacity in the states, particularly in the Midwest, that there is a lot of soybean meal that needs to be exported. And that export, a lot of it goes out to Southeast Asia, out of the Pacific Northwest. So what this did is it's going to allow them to double AGP to double their export volume out of the Pacific Northwest. So it's big. It's a big thing for soybean farmers.
Yeah, I commend the United Soybean Board for doing that. For many, many years, our edge over the South American producers was our transportation system superior. And now we worry about it becoming our Achilles heel, that we might have weaknesses because of needing to upgrade the river system, needing to take care of our ports, maintaining the interstate highway system to the degree it needs to be.
It is, and take it from a farmer that lives right on the Mississippi. Yeah. I've had the opportunity to go to Brazil, South America twice, and seen what they're doing, and they're improving. And I watched my lock and dam 17, 18, right where I'm at, not getting improved, which bothers me. But I will say that we're trying to fight for that farmer to improve this lock system that we have on that upper Mississippi. And we have some money set aside in 25 for the lock and dam 25 to go to a 1,200 foot lock, which would be huge.
And again, that would be research. I mean, further development that is needed.
We do study and planning,
Gotcha.
And that's what we're allowed to do. And so we have that set aside. We're waiting for the Corps to decide if they can use that money or not, which is a little bit frustrating, but I think we'll get it done because we've been successful helping out deepening the port in New Orleans from 45 foot to 50, which was through economic studies and stuff, it improves basis by about 10 to 12 cents in the upper Midwest.
Wow.
So that's a big deal.
5 foot deeper on the Mississippi through New Orleans brought 10 to 12 cents to soybean growers up here.
Now that's people a lot smarter than me figuring that
Sure.
math, but I'm saying that it is a big game changer, especially when you talk about going to China, where they have a lot of deep water ports and they want those ships that can go 50-foot deep draft.
And let us remember that the Brazilians have done the same thing. You know, dredging ports, dredging the Paraná River, adding to the train capabilities to move by their railroads down there. They're not asleep at the switch.
No, they have a lot of advantages over us, but we have some here yet. So, and we're gonna try to maximize those and try to get our transportation to be as efficient as we can, whether it's rail, whether it's some of us have to deal with bridges that are causing us to have to take 5-mile trips around. We're trying to do a lot of things like that. We have a great partner organization called Soy Transportation Coalition that does a lot of great things there, and we partner with them with those dollars, try to leverage all those dollars we can to try to help out the farmer in transportation.
Rob, before we let you go, you mentioned you're looking ahead to helping out with that Lock and Dam 25. You got some money set aside. What else are you looking forward to in 2025?
You know, one of the coolest things that I took part in leading our work group at the United Soybean Board was you learn from all these other farmers around the country, which is really, really cool. And there was an issue down south in grading soybeans. And so we're taking some of those monies and investing them into some research and trying to come up with, and there's a real fancy name for the technology that they're using, but basically it's going to be grading soybeans with AI and with a machine. And the reason being is we wanted to get rid of the Friday afternoon, I want to get out of here grade, or the Monday morning hangover grade. And that was a big issue down south, not so much up here, but down south it is. And so we're trying to help out those farmers down there. And so that's going to be kind of fun to look into and stuff. And we're always promoting the use of, looks like we're trying to work with our Class 1 rail and marine when it comes to biodiesel. And so anything we can do to help move that oil, it's money in the farmer's pocket. So.
Your enthusiasm is obvious and contagious. Love hearing you talk about these possibilities and how you're carefully spending producer dollars.
We're trying. Everybody on that board takes that very seriously, because we all come from the farm. How would I spend this at home? Or I always sit there and I think, would I be mad at myself for voting a certain way or spending money a certain way? And I'm like, we try to be as responsible, and we try to make sure that there's payback on that dollar. And a lot of times, you know, the last study that we did, for every dollar we put in of checkoff, it comes back at $12.34. So that's a big return for the farmer.
1,200% return is not something to sniff at. Rob Ewalt, Iowa soybean farmer leader with the United Soybean Board. Thanks so much for joining us up here on the main stage, and thanks for being a partner with Farm Progress. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, guys.
Good to see you, sir.
Thank you, Rob.
Good to see you guys. You bet. I want to share just a quick story because I think it could be crucial to somebody in this audience. Just a few days ago, near the town of Sublette, Illinois, a farmer became trapped in his grain bin right around 12 noon. He was up to his waist. Temperature outside was 70 degrees. Temperature in that bin was over 100, about 104. All of the first responders came. Local volunteers had trained. The key, they knew to call tactical rescue teams that would come in and respond immediately, guys who were trained with the apparatus and the bigger fire departments. He was in there 2 hours and 48 minutes. And they finally were able to get him out. Life flight helicopter was standing by. They took him to a regional medical center at Rockford, Illinois. The gentleman, about 70 years old, was back home and in his bed that night.
Wow.
It's a real tribute to our first responders. Many of you are so well trained. You respond when the call comes in. Some of you have done it not just for 10 years, 25 years, 30 years. Thank you for those of you who are doing so, but be extra careful about getting into a grain bin.
Boy, thank goodness they weren't dealing with Monday's temperatures here in Sublette.
Absolutely. There's so many thank goodnesses when you look at that story, but it was a success story. I thought about it as GT was up here because he's been involved in the volunteer service in Pennsylvania as well. So any of you volunteer firefighters back home, any of you have been involved in that at all? Maybe as a trustee, or I helped hire firefighters for 22 years in the western suburbs of Chicago, full-time firefighters and paramedics, and we'd get a lot of competent volunteers. farmers from rural areas would move in, and it was a great job. But they had paid their dues as volunteers. So thank you, all of you who do that.
Absolutely. Keeps rural America safe, that is for sure. Let's keep the show rolling. Max, what do you say? ADM Main Stage brought to you by ADM. Let's meet Jessica Alderson. She's the Farm Direct Fertilizer Territory Manager. Jessica, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
How long have you been with ADM?
I've been with ADM for 10 years and kind of have a, I want to say fangirl moment, but we actually have a corn crib sign signed by you in our nursery. FYI.
Where's this?
It's in Nebraska. My husband's a big fan. I told him I was talking to you, and he kind of geeked out a little bit.
You said 10 years. One thing that strikes me is just the quality of people that have come on that ADM team that we've met. I mean, we're here year after year after year, and you folks are here. And it seems like the company has attracted good people. There've been a lot of changes. The company has morphed to change to the demand and what's happening in the world.
Yeah.
And yet the folks who come on board are just good people, ag people in many, many instances. I've enjoyed meeting them.
Absolutely. Good people find good people. I think that's generally true.
Yep.
And to that end, let's talk about what you do with Farm Direct Fertilizer. Jessica, what does that mean? How does that work with ADM?
Yeah, so really you talk about good people. In the last few years, we've really transitioned from kind of this service everybody, do everything, be all of these things, and we've really honed in on servicing the farmer. And what that means is we want to provide value to the farmer at every level. ADM's known as being a grain company. What offsets, bringing grain up the river or bringing grain down the river, bringing fertilizer up the river. So it's a beautiful offset for our business. We've actually been in it for 20 years. The Farm Direct Fertilizer kind of came on kind of by happenstance, but we were able to figure out that was a niche that we could service. There is a segment of the farming population that's really tried to step away and do things differently. And so really what we do is we think differently about fertilizer. We offer pricing 10, 12, 18 months in advance. And so if you're a grower and you want to do something different, you want to manage your margins different, you want to think differently, you can really step out and say, I want to go procure my urea for 2025 because I don't know what's going to happen, but I've got grain sold at $5 if you forward sold.
Sure.
Now I can go hedge my risk. And now I know that this third of my expenses is fertilizer. I'm going to lock this in and my margin is here. And now I can layer in these other purchases that make up the difference. And you can be a little bit more profitable and think differently about what you're doing and be more efficient. So you're running and operating a profitable business.
I hadn't thought about it before. Perhaps the advantage, the perspective that you folks have because of your transportation capabilities and infrastructure. I look at the tows operating on the river system we were talking about earlier. I've been on the ADM boat, the Sally Archer, which is still in operation.
It is, yes.
After the time that I was on there many, many years ago.
Yep.
But it really gives you a different view of things, does it not? To have a handle on what's moving in the system and what needs to get to a strategic location.
100%. Logistics is definitely our bread and butter. We do that really well. We've got ocean going vessels. We've got barges that bring it up the river. We've got a fleet of semis that take it to the terminals. Then we've got grain backhauls. We've got cogen backhauls. We've got corn co backhauls. We've got all of these segments of our business. And really, we do logistics so well and we're able to maximize and take advantage of that so that we can get product cheaper. Because at the end of the day, everybody wants a cheaper product, a higher price on grain, and we all want to make money.
Now, do I need to if I'm buying 18 months out, do I need to be prepared to take delivery for the quantity at home or nope? How can you explain how it works from a practical perspective?
Yep, for sure. So we have a couple different options. So if you want to invest in infrastructure, we've got options for that. If you want to buy ahead, there's traditionally carry in the market, just like there is in the grain market, right? You sell December futures today, you can take advantage of a 20 or 30 cent carry by rolling it forward and not delivering it at harvest or whenever, right? You can do the same thing with fertilizer. There might be carry, the market might be inverted. The market might be telling you, buy it now or take it later, or, there's same concepts, right? When you think about it from a commodity standpoint. But no, you don't have to have storage. You don't have to have the ability to go to the river. We can facilitate that. You can do it. We find creative ways to make things happen that fit your needs. We can do custom blends too. So you don't just have to take straight MAP. You can do a 92330 if you really want to. Throw some sulfur and zinc in there. We really can do just about anything that you need. And we want to service customers. That's really what we do well.
So what type of support comes with it? I get am I doing most of this on my own, Jessica?
Kind of depends. Everybody does it different. So I've got customers that I've worked with for 5 or 6 years now. They started truck to truck. We were lining up the trucks for them. We bring it in, we offload it from our truck to their truck. They spread it, they do whatever. They were using somebody to custom apply it. Now they bought a spreader. Now they've invested in storage. And this is a 6-year process, right? So over the years, they figured out what works, what doesn't work. The only regret this person that I'm thinking of has had is he didn't build his shed big enough. So, I mean, really, you can piecemeal this together however it works best. It's really, we want to do what works. And all of our sales team, from our sales team to our support team to our procurement team, we will find creative ways. If you need a different alternative than what we're offering, we'll figure out if it works. If it doesn't, oh well. If it does, we're going to figure out what we can put in front of you that really gives you what you need.
That's a commitment to flexibility right there on the main stage. I love to hear that from
Hey,
a company the size of ADM.
We do what we can.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Now, I hear from a lot of folks as we look out at the margins in the ag industry. They're tough. Fertilizer was a challenge on those margins in 2022 and in 2023. 2024, it seems like it is less. It's always going to be a component, but it's a little bit less of a hit to that margin. A little bit less.
Yeah.
Are we entering a period where maybe we can breathe a little bit more on fertilizer? Do we have a good sense of supply as you look out to this next year?
I mean, when you think about, so with ADM, we offer a monthly grower call. We started making recommendations, and I'm going to talk specifically on phosphates. We started making recommendations on phosphates at the end of May. Now think about that. We're telling you to buy 50% of your phosphate needs at the end of May. Some people didn't even have their crop planted at that point. Really hard for somebody to go commit to 2025 inputs when you're like, I don't even know if I'm going to have a crop. What that does, though, and what that signal to the market is, hey, we don't need any fertilizer. And so we're seeing imports drop. So when you think about fertilizer, yes, it's in somebody's shed down the road, but fertilizer is a global commodity. And most people don't realize it. It trades, it's very fluid, it's very volatile, just like the grain markets are. So whatever's going on in India, whatever's going on in China, in Egypt, in Russia, all of those pieces affect the fertilizer market in the US.
So just because it's quiet here doesn't mean we can just sleep on it and not worry about fertilizer for next year.
Exactly.
Because anything could blow up.
Exactly. And in the phosphate side of things, we're probably not going to see those prices soften. And we made the recommendation early on to cover your needs. That's some of the value that we bring. We'll give you the information. Do with it what you will. Some people acted, some people didn't. It's going to be very interesting going into 24 and 25. Today, it probably doesn't make sense to lock it in, but all of our traders from our procurement team down, you have to do what you can afford today because it is not a one-size-fits-all type of solution.
That's so true.
Risk management.
100%.
It was important a year ago. I would say it's triple, at least triple in importance now when you look at the period we may be entering here.
And not making a decision is making a decision. So
that's so true.
Yep,
absolutely. Jessica, any final thoughts? We got folks who want to learn about the Home Direct Fertilizer program. Where should they go, or should they call somebody? What's the best place to get started?
You bet. So we've got a support line that goes directly to our Minnesota headquarters. If you call that number, you can always reach somebody there and they'll connect you to a salesperson. We also have a fertilizer app. It's ADM Fertilizer. If you go to the App Store, should be able to find it. It's a little ADM app that says fertilizer underneath it. But you can visit admadvantage.com/fertilizer to learn more. Somebody from our team will reach out to you. If you don't hear from somebody, there's a number you can call on there. You can get connected with us. Our footprint is growing. We've got a lot of people that want to do this. So we want you to connect with us. We want to learn about your business, and we want to service you to the best of our ability.
Now sounds like the time to give it a shot.
Why not?
Jessica Alderson, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us.
Yes.
She's the Farm Direct Fertilizer Territory Manager at ADM. Jessica, appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much for your time and all that you do.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Great to meet you. Thank
Tell
you
the folks
so
back
much.
home hello. Thank you.
Perfect. All right, folks, that does it for today's noon show.
Folks have been watching us, I suppose, around the world, so we'll say so
Yes.
long to them. We're not leaving the stage. You're not leaving the
Well,
stage.
I guess not.
You're here for a little
Yes,
bit,
indeed.
pal. But just a personal message to you folks. Thanks for coming out to be with us at the Farm Progress Show this year. Many of us have been here for a long. Anybody here for more than 40 of these? Just curious. Usually I
Anybody's done
see
more
a
than
hand.
40
I've been to
farm
45. A reporter asked me the other day, and I think it's been about 45 of them. But the neat thing about it is you get to see a lot of good friends over and over, and that's pretty special. Those of you who watched Orion and myself and Mike over the years, thank you. It has meant a lot to us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Max,
Rascal.
for everything you do. Thank you, folks. You can stick around. We'll be having a conversation with Tyrannus. Jason Mitten will join me on stage in just a moment. And then the show will continue here at the ground. So give us a few minutes to get things reset, and we'll be right back up here on the main stage. Appreciate your attendance, everybody. Thank you.